Welcome to Kiki's Talk Buffet. Let's talk it out.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take your sources, break them down, and pull out those key insights, basically, a shortcut to getting up to speed without all the overwhelm.
Exactly. And if you're listening, you're likely someone who wants to grasp important ideas fast, maybe see things from a few different angles, and, get those aha moments.
That's the goal. Today, we're diving into Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, focusing on the real foundational stuff.
And this book, it clearly resonated. You look at the endorsements, Warren Bennett, Brian Napier, Tom Peters, big names in leadership.
Right. And it's kind of amazing how relevant it still feels, even with all the changes in the world since it first came out. The core principles seem pretty timeless.
They really do.
Our main focus today, that big shift Covey talks about, moving from what he calls the personality ethic.
Which is all about, image and techniques.
Yeah, surface stuff towards the character ethic. That deeper focus on virtues, principles. The real bedrock for, well, lasting success and happiness. Okay, let's get into it.
Well, what's fascinating to start with is Covey's point that for maybe the first 150 years of success literature in America, the focus was really squarely on character.
Like what, specifically?
Things like integrity, humility, fidelity, courage, patience, those core virtues. Think Benjamin Franklin's autobiography. It's all about building that inner self.
Okay, so that was the standard for a long time.
Yeah, but then, Covey argues, after World War I, there was this pretty significant shift.
Right, and that's when the focus moved to this personality ethic. It became less about who you are and more about how you appear.
Exactly. Charm, social image, having the right attitude, mastering communication techniques. Even things like positive thinking fall into this category.
Is it about presentation, networking skills?
Yeah.
The book even mentions potentially manipulative tactics, which is interesting.
And you can see the appeal, right? In a fast-changing world, people want quick fixes.
Yeah.
The personality ethic kind of promises that easy ways to improve relationships or get ahead.
But Covey's got that great analogy.
Yeah.
It's like treating really deep problems with just aspirin and Band-Aids.
Superficial fixes. You can learn all the techniques, smile perfectly, have a firm handshake. But if your actual character isn't solid underneath, if there's no integrity,
It's going to fall apart eventually, especially in the long run. The skills and personality stuff, they matter, sure, but Covey says they're secondary.
Absolutely. Without that foundation of integrity, real lasting success in relationships just isn't going to happen.
It's like that farming analogy he uses. You can't expect a harvest in autumn if you forgot to plant in the spring. There are, natural laws governing human interactions, too.
Which brings us to a really crucial idea, how we actually see the world. Covey calls this our paradigm.
And it's more than just literal sight, right? It's
Yeah.
our perception, our understanding.
Our whole interpretation of everything. He calls it our personal map. And the key thing is your map isn't the territory itself.
That Detroit versus Chicago map example is brilliant. You could be trying your hardest, driving fast or whatever. But if your map is wrong,
You're just going to get more lost faster. And he says we have these maps on 2 levels. Maps of reality, how things are, and maps of our values, how things should be.
and we filter everything through these maps, often without even realizing our map might be, well, wrong. We just assume we're seeing things objectively.
There's that famous psychology experiment he mentions with the ambiguous image, the one that looks like a young woman or an old woman.
Oh, yeah, I know that one.
What they found was if you showed people one version briefly beforehand, it heavily influenced what they saw in the combined picture later. It wasn't about logic. It was about prior conditioning.
So people would be absolutely convinced they were right, even seeing the same picture. One sees a young woman, the other an old lady.
Exactly. And even when shown the other way of seeing it, they often snapped right back to their first impression. It really shows how deep these paradigms run.
And that's the source of our attitudes and behaviors. So just trying to change the behavior, the surface stuff.
Without tackling the underlying paradigm, it's limited. You won't get lasting change.
But recognizing this, recognizing our paradigms are shaped by experience, that's powerful, isn't it?
It really is, because then you can take responsibility for them. You can start to examine your own map, question it, and maybe become a bit more open to how someone else might see things differently.
It stops being, I'm right, you're wrong, and becomes more like, you're using a different map.
Precisely. Which leads naturally to the idea of paradigm shifts.
Those big aha moments.
Yeah, when suddenly you see things in a totally new way. And Covey says, the deeper your initial belief, the more powerful that shift feels when it happens.
He gives those historical examples, like Copernicus realizing the sun, not the earth, was the center,
Ugh.
or Einstein's relativity-changing physics.
Or even things like germ theory in medicine. Huge shifts in understanding.
But he also points out not all paradigm shifts are necessarily good.
Right. He actually frames that move from the character ethic to the personality ethic as a kind of negative paradigm shift, moving away from the fundamentals.
And that personal story he shares about the kids on the subway, that hits hard.
It really does. His initial reaction is annoyance, frustration.
Totally understandable. Noisy kids, passive dad.
But then he finds out their mother just died an hour ago. And instantly,
Everything changes. His whole perception shifts. The annoyance disappears, replaced by compassion.
it's such a powerful illustration of how a change in understanding, a paradigm shift, can completely alter your feelings and your behavior in an instant.
And he links this to big life events, too, like near-death experiences or taking on a huge new role, things that often force us to reevaluate everything.
Absolutely. They trigger shifts in our priorities or perspectives.
So the core message here seems to be tweaking attitudes and behaviors. That gives you small improvements. But for real, significant change.
You need those deeper paradigm shifts. It's like Thoreau's analogy, hacking at the leaves versus striking at the root. Behavior is the leaves, the paradigm is the root.
Okay, so if we need these shifts, what should we be shifting towards?
Towards a principle-centered paradigm. This is the heart of the character ethic. It's rooted in universal, timeless principles. Think of them like natural laws.
Like gravity, something that just is, whether we like it or not.
Exactly. They exist independently of us.
Yeah.
He uses that great story from Frank Koch about the naval ships in the fog.
Oh, the lighthouse story.
Yeah.
Where the captain keeps demanding the other ship change course.
Yeah. And he gets more and more insistent, pulling rank, until the reply comes back. This is a lighthouse. Your call.
It perfectly shows the futility, even the danger, of ignoring reality, of ignoring those fixed principles. You don't break the principles.
You break yourself against them. They're objective realities, like that lighthouse. Covey argues these principles guide human growth and happiness, and they form the foundation of successful societies.
And he says these aren't like hidden secrets. They're pretty common across cultures.
Yeah, he argues you find them in most major religions, ethical systems. They resonate with our basic human conscience. Things like fairness,
Which leads to justice and equality.
integrity and honesty, the basis of trust, service contributing beyond ourselves, quality or excellence, potential, the idea that we can grow, which requires patience and nurturing.
And it's important to see the difference between these deep principles and, say, specific practices.
Crucial distinction. Practices are situational, how we apply principles. A practice might work in one situation, but not another. Principles are the underlying truths, universal and unchanging.
And different from values, too. How does that work?
Values are our maps, what we believe is important. Principles are the territory itself, the reality. When our values align with correct principles, our map becomes accurate and we navigate life more effectively.
So principles are like a compass for how to act.
A perfect analogy. And you can grasp their importance by thinking about their opposites, what happens when you have dishonesty, unfairness, incompetence. The results speak for themselves.
So the more our own paradigms, our maps, line up with these fundamental principles,
The more accurate our view of reality is, and the more effective we'll be. Getting the map right has a much bigger impact than just trying harder with a flawed map.
which leads into why that personality ethics stuff is so tempting, right? The promise of quick fixes.
Exactly. It appeals to that desire for easy answers, for shortcuts to success in life and relationships, bypassing the natural process of growth.
The get-rich-quick scheme for personal development. But it's like having that Detroit map for Chicago, ultimately frustrating.
Covey quotes Erich Fromm on this, talking about the superficiality, the loss of self when people are only focused on image, becoming like living corpses.
Because real growth takes time, doesn't it? Life happens in stages.
Absolutely. Physical growth, intellectual, emotional, it's sequential. You can't skip steps. A baby has to crawl before it walks. Same applies to skills, to relationships, to character.
We get this with physical stuff. You don't expect to play tennis like a pro overnight.
Right. Or play a piano concerto without practice. We accept the process there. But somehow, in the personal and interpersonal realms, we often resist it. We want the shortcut.
So real progress means what? Being honest about where you are now.
Precisely. Acknowledging your current level, maybe you're a 2 out of 10 in some area, and then working to get to a 3. It's that journey of 1,000 miles starting with one step.
And admitting you don't know is often the first step to actually learning something.
Yes, that Thoreau quote. If I knew for certain that a man was coming to my house with the conscious design of doing me good, I should run for my life. It sounds odd, but
The point is, if you think you already have all the answers, you're closed off to actually receiving help or learning anything new.
exactly that. You have to be open, acknowledge you might not know. That's the starting point.
Like the story of the father whose daughters felt he was too strict. He wasn't willing to see his part in it.
Right. He couldn't take that first step of acknowledging his own contribution, maybe his emotional bank account deficit with them, so change was impossible. Because skills like truly listening, they require more than just technique.
They need emotional strength, patience.
Honesty, a real desire to understand the other person. You can fake charm for a while, maybe manipulate a bit.
But your real character shows through eventually, especially in close relationships over time.
And he sees this in organizations too. Leaders trying to buy a new culture with training or speeches without respecting the natural process of building trust.
That story about his daughter's third birthday party is so telling, trying to force her to share.
Yeah, the focus was entirely on how it looked to other parents, the external perception. It completely missed the point that a child needs to experience ownership before they can genuinely learn to share.
And the tense atmosphere made any real teaching impossible anyway.
Right. Teaching values needs sensitivity, the right moment, the right relationship. Sometimes, in tense situations, teaching just feels like judgment.
That's a really key insight.
And he suggests maybe some people struggle to give or share in relationships because they never really felt that sense of ownership themselves, lacking that solid self-identity.
We see successful people or groups, and we admire them.
But then we look for the quick trick, the technique, instead of digging into the underlying principles and the hard work that got them there.
And those quick fixes, the personality ethic stuff, might ease the symptoms for a bit.
But the root problem remains, and sometimes gets worse because we keep papering over it.
So he brings it back to those initial problems he mentioned. The struggling manager, the parents, the person seeking fulfillment. The personality ethic offers easy answers. Discipline harder, learn time management tricks, find new relationship techniques.
But none of that addresses the deeper paradigm issues. Is the problem really just inefficiency? Is doing more, faster the answer? Or is it our fundamental view of time, life, ourselves?
Is the problem always the other person in the relationship? Or could it be our own assumptions about love and marriage?
These are the deeper questions. And Covey suggests that thoughtful people are starting to see through the empty promises of the personality ethic and are looking for something more substantial, something based on principles.
Which requires a different way of thinking altogether.
Exactly, that Einstein quote. The significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them. We need a new level.
A deeper level,
Yeah.
a principle-centered, character-based approach.
And that's what the 7 Habits offer. It's an inside-out approach.
Inside out, meaning start with yourself.
Yes. Start with your own paradigms, your character, your motives. If you want a better marriage, be the kind of partner who contributes positively. Want more cooperative kids? Be a more understanding parent. Want trust? Be trustworthy.
So private victory precedes public victory. You have to master yourself before you can effectively work with others.
Precisely. Keep promises to yourself first. Trying to fix relationships before fixing yourself, or focusing on personality before character, it's putting the cart before the horse.
And this inside-out way isn't a one-time fix. It's ongoing.
It's a continuous process of renewal based on natural laws of growth, an upward spiral towards independence, and then effective interdependence.
Contrasted with the outside-in approach, which often leads to blaming others when things don't work out.
It's all right. Trying to change the other person, focusing only on external rules, it leads to stagnation. He even points to larger conflicts where each side just blames the other.
Shifting to inside out can feel pretty radical, though, especially with the personality ethic being so dominant.
It can. But Covey believes these principles actually resonate with our inner conscience, our common sense. We kind of know them already. The challenge is consciously using them, which requires that inside-out paradigm.
He ends that section with the T.S. Eliot quote about returning to where you started and knowing it for the first time.
Yeah, suggesting this journey through the principles brings a deeper understanding of fundamental truths.
Okay, let's talk about habits themselves. What's Covey's definition?
It's the intersection of 3 things: knowledge, the what to do and why; skill, the how to do it; and desire, the want to do it, the motivation.
You need all 3.
Absolutely. Knowledge alone isn't enough. Skill without the drive isn't enough. Desire without knowing how It takes all three to form a real habit.
And change isn't linear. It's
A spiral. As your character changes, your perception changes. That new perception reinforces the character change. It's an upward growth process.
but changing habits.
Yeah.
It's not always comfortable, is it?
Definitely not. It often requires effort, stepping outside your comfort zone, but the payoff, Covey argues, is long-term effectiveness and happiness.
This leads to his maturity continuum.
Yeah.
What are the stages?
3 stages: dependence, independence, and interdependence.
Dependence is relying on others, the you focus.
Yeah. You take care of me. You are responsible for my results. It's the paradigm of infancy, but some people stay there emotionally or intellectually.
Then independence, the I stage.
I can do it. I am responsible. I can choose. It's about self-reliance, making your own way a major achievement.
But not the final goal.
No. The highest level is interdependence, the we stage.
We can do it. We
Yeah.
can cooperate. We can combine our talents for something greater.
Exactly. Dependent people need others. Independent people can get things done alone. Interdependent people recognize that working together yields the best results.
And society sometimes overvalues independence.
It can, yeah. Sometimes as a reaction against dependence, but true effectiveness in our interconnected world requires moving beyond just I to we.
And you can't really be interdependent if you're still dependent.
No. Interdependence is a choice only independent people can make. It requires self-mastery, character strength. You need to be solid in yourself before you can truly collaborate effectively.
So the first 3 habits, they're about getting to independence, the private victories.
Correct. Habits 1, 2, and 3 focus on self-mastery, moving from dependence to independence. That creates the foundation.
And habits 4, 5, and 6 are the public victories. Teamwork, communication, cooperation, moving towards interdependence.
Exactly. You build the foundation of independence first, then you build the skills for effective interdependence. You don't have to perfect the first 3 before starting the others, but understanding the sequence helps.
And habit 7.
That's the habit of renewal. Sharpening the saw, basically, continuously improving in all areas: physical, mental, social, emotional, spiritual. It encompasses and enables all the other habits in that upward spiral.
Okay, so how does all this lead to effectiveness? What does he mean by that?
Well, the habits are effective because they're based on principles, they build character, they last, and they help you solve problems and seize opportunities. But the core definition comes down to the PPC balance.
Ah, yes, production and production capability, the goose and the golden eggs.
That's the one. P is production, the golden eggs, the results you want. PC is production capability, the goose, the asset or ability that produces those results.
And the fable teaches, don't kill the goose just to get more eggs now.
Right. Focus only on P and you destroy PC. But if you only focus on PC and never get any P, you starve. True effectiveness is about balancing the two, getting the results while maintaining the ability to keep getting results.
It's about sustainability.
Precisely. And he applies this to 3 kinds of assets. First, physical assets.
Like the lawnmower example. If you run it into the ground without maintenance.
Eventually it breaks down, you can't cut the lawn, P is gone, and it costs more to fix or replace, PC is damaged. Short-term focus destroys the asset.
Then financial assets.
Same idea. If you spend your capital, TC, just to increase your current lifestyle, get more P now, you reduce your ability to generate income later. Your earning power itself is a key financial asset that needs investment, but NEC education, skills to maintain its value.
And finally, human assets.
Right.
Which seems the most crucial.
Absolutely, because people manage the other assets, and the PPC balance is vital here. Think about marriage.
If you only focus on getting your rights or enjoyment.
Without nurturing the relationship itself, the connection, the trust, the PC, the goose, through kindness, consideration, listening, the relationship weakens. Manipulation or blame just kills the goose faster.
And with kids, focusing only on obedience now.
Through harsh authority, or maybe being overly permissive just to be liked now, without building their responsibility, discipline, confidence, their PC.
Yeah.
You undermine their long-term capability. Will the relationship PC be strong enough later for real communication?
That example of wanting the clean room P versus building the child's willingness and ability to clean it PC is very clear. Nagging gets the room clean now maybe, but damages the relationship and the child's sense of responsibility.
Right, you damage the goose, the child's willingness, the relationship, just to get one golden egg. a clean room today.
And this applies to organizations, too.
Definitely. The manager who runs the machine ragged for short-term output to get promoted, living a broken machine, damaged PC for the next person.
Yeah.
Accounting often hides this damage to long-term capability.
And it applies to customers and employees, the human assets of a business.
Critically, the clam chowder place, watering down the soup, chasing short-term profit, but destroying customer trust and loyalty. The PC, the goose.
Or companies saying customer first, but treating employees badly.
Huge inconsistency. The principle is, treat your employees how you want them to treat your customers. You can buy their hands and time, but not their hearts, loyalty, creativity, their PC.
That story about the managers complaining about lazy employees, but treating customers totally differently, it reveals that golden eggs mindset.
It stifles potential. So effectiveness is balance. Too much P leads to burnout, breakdown. Too much PC without results is also ineffective.
It's about finding that sweet spot between short-term needs and long-term capacity.
Yeah.
Making conscious choices.
Working late versus getting rest, forcing compliance versus building trust. It's always a balancing act. The PPC balance is the essence of effectiveness, the foundation for the habits.
Okay, that sets the stage perfectly for habit 1. Be proactive, the foundation of it all.
Yes, the principle of personal vision. Covey starts by asserting that our fundamental nature is proactive, not reactive.
Meaning we're not just products of our environment.
Exactly. We have the ability to choose our response to things and even to influence or create our environment. It's not about being pushy.
But about recognizing we have responsibility. We can make things happen.
That's the core idea. The Rose quote about humans being able to consciously elevate their lives fits perfectly here.
And this relies heavily on self-awareness.
Hugely. That unique human ability to think about our own thought processes, to observe ourselves objectively, it's what allows us to examine our self-paradigm, our internal map of who we are.
And we shouldn't just rely on the social mirror, what others think or say about us.
Right, because that mirror can be distorted, full of limiting labels or expectations.
He talks about those deterministic maps that come from the social mirror.
Yeah, the 3 common ones. Genetic determinism, it's in my DNA. Psychic determinism, my upbringing made me this way. And environmental determinism. My boss bra situation is the problem.
They all basically say we're conditioned, like Pavlov's dogs. Stimulus leads to a fixed response.
That's the underlying theory, and Covey fundamentally questions whether those maps are accurate or empowering.
Which leads to the idea of the space between stimulus and response.
Yes, and the incredible example of Viktor Frankl in the concentration camps.
Even in that horrific situation.
Where everything external was controlled or taken away, Frankl realized they couldn't touch his fundamental self-awareness. He could still observe his own experience, and in that space between what was happening to him, the stimulus, and his reaction, he found his freedom.
The freedom to choose his response.
The last of the human freedoms, he called it. He chose dignity. He chose meaning. He mentally rehearsed helping others after liberation. He exercised the freedom they couldn't take away.
It's an incredibly powerful illustration of that core principle. Between stimulus and response, man has the freedom to choose.
And Covey identifies 4 human endowments that make this possible: self-awareness, imagination, creating beyond current reality, conscience, inner sense of right-wrong, and independent will, acting based on self-awareness, free from external control.
Unlike animals, who are mostly driven by instinct or conditioning.
Humans can write their own programs. External things influence us, of course, but our greatest power is that freedom to choose our response.
So that's what proactivity means, taking responsibility.
Exactly. Our behavior is a function of our decisions, not our conditions. He breaks down responsible as responsible, having the ability to choose your response.
Proactive people don't blame circumstances or other people.
They don't. Their behavior comes from their own chosen values. Reactive people are driven by feelings, circumstances, the environment. Proactive people are driven by values. If it's raining, it doesn't ruin a proactive person's day. Their internal weather is steady.
It's not about being unaffected, but about choosing the response based on values.
Precisely. Like Eleanor Roosevelt said, no one can hurt you without your consent. Or Gandhi. They cannot take away our self-respect if we do not give it to them. It's our choice to be offended or hurt that often wounds us most deeply.
So accepting my past choices made me who I am opens the door to, I can make different choices today.
That's the empowering realization. Like the nurse in the story who initially felt helpless about a difficult patient, then realized she could choose her response, her attitude, her own happiness in the situation.
It's our response that often causes the most pain, not the event itself.
Yes, and adversity, approached proactively, can actually strengthen us. Frankel identified attitude value, our response to suffering, as potentially the highest value. It can lead to those paradigm shifts, a broader perspective.
So proactive means taking responsibility, creating conditions, not just reacting.
Like the proactive job seeker who doesn't just wait, but actively researches, identifies needs, and presents solutions.
People often get the idea but then make excuses.
Absolutely. It takes initiative. That family approach you mentioned, encouraging kids to figure it out, fosters that proactive muscle. Demanding responsibility isn't demeaning. It respects their proactive nature.
And the difference between being proactive and reactive is huge.
Massive, especially combined with intelligence. Proactivity is essential for that PPC balance and is the absolute bedrock for the other 6 habits.
That meeting anecdote, 2 days of reactive complaining about the economy.
Just dragged everyone down. Total focus on things they couldn't control.
But day 3, shifting to what can we do?
Suddenly, energy shifts, ideas flow, a plan emerges. Facing reality, okay, the economy is tough, but focusing proactively, here's how we can improve management, cut costs, gain market share, taking control of their own actions.
It's not just positive thinking then. It's facing reality but acting on what you can control.
Exactly. And organizations can do this too, proactively shape their culture and goals.
Our language reveals a lot about this, doesn't it?
It really does. Reactive language tends to shift responsibility.
Like, that's just the way I am. Or, he makes me so mad.
Or, I don't have time. If only, I have to do this. It all implies lack of choice, being controlled by external forces.
Whereas proactive language owns the choice.
Right. The student wanting to miss class for tennis, guiding him to see he was choosing the tournament over the class, not being forced. Reactive language reinforces helplessness.
And that conversation about love, I just don't feel it anymore.
Covey's point is profound. Love is a verb. Proactive people act lovingly, which generates the feeling. Reactive people wait for the feeling to dictate their actions. Big difference.
This ties into the circles of concern and influence. Where do we focus our energy?
Yes. Circle of concern is everything we worry about: health, kids, economy, nuclear war. Circle of influence is much smaller, the things we can actually do something about.
Proactive people focus where?
On their circle of influence. Working on things they can change. Their energy is positive, enlarging, and their influence actually grows.
Reactive people.
Focus on the circle of concern. Other people's flaws, problems out there they can't control. This leads to blaming, victim mentality, negative energy, and their circle of influence actually shrinks.
That personal example of worrying about a child, then shifting focus to one's own paradigms and actions within the relationship, that's focusing on the circle of influence.
Exactly. Covey notes sometimes people's concern is smaller than their influence due to immaturity, but generally, proactive people have a wide concern but focus their energy on their influence.
And problems fall into 3 types regarding our influence.
Direct control, our own behavior; indirect control, other people's behavior; and no control, past mistakes, some realities.
And the proactive approach starts where for all 3?
Within the circle of influence: direct control problems. Work on your habits, habits 1 to 3. Indirect control: change your methods of influence, habits 4 to 6. No control: change your attitude, accept it peacefully, serenity prayer. The first step is always something you can do.
And focusing on our circle of influence actually expands it.
Yes. By choosing our response proactively, we become more influential, like that manager working under the autocratic president.
Instead of complaining with everyone else.
He focused on his job, compensated for the president's weaknesses, buffered his team, built trust,
And became indispensable, gaining influence, while the complainer stayed stuck. His choices made the difference, not the circumstances.
Proactivity isn't aggression, it's being smarter, more value-driven, realistic, understanding root causes. Like Gandhi working patiently at the grassroots, building influence bit by bit.
Reactive language uses if only, focused on the concern. Proactive uses I can, focused on influence.
Right. Seeing the problem as out there gives it power over you. The proactive way is to change from the inside out, be more resourceful, creative, cooperative, and you start to change the out there.
Like Joseph in the Bible, sold into slavery, but focused on what he could do.
And rose to incredible influence. It's about taking responsibility for your sphere, however small, and working within it. Even in tough relationships, blaming the other is reactive. Proactive is focusing on being a better partner yourself.
Unconditional positive regard, almost.
In a sense, focus on being a great employee, a great student. If you truly can't control the situation, you can still control your attitude. The outside-in approach waits for the world to change before you change.
But before we just shift focus, Covey mentions considering the other end of the stick, consequences and mistakes.
Yes, important qualifiers. These are in our circle of concern, but we need to acknowledge them. First, consequences. We choose our actions, but the consequences are governed by natural law. Principles, they're outside our immediate choice.
Violate principles, get negative consequences, pick up one end of the stick, the action, you pick up the other, the consequence.
Exactly. Freedom comes with responsibility for outcomes. Second, mistakes. We all make them. Regret is natural.
But proactive people don't dwell on them. Since they're in the past, no control.
Yeah. Right. They acknowledge the mistake, learn from it, and move on. Like the quarterback's son using his watch band snap, let go of the last play, focus on the next one.
So the proactive response to a mistake is immediate acknowledgement, correction if possible, and learning.
Yes, that turns failure into success.
Yeah.
Ignoring or hiding mistakes compounds them. Our response to the mistake hurts us more than the mistake itself. Acknowledge it fast, and you regain your power.
And the absolute core of the circle of influence.
Making and keeping commitments, that's proactivity in its purest form. It's also the essence of growth.
Our endowments, self-awareness, conscience, let us see where we need to change. Imagination and independent will let us make the commitment, set the goal.
Right. 2 key proactive acts. Make a commitment, keep it. Set a goal, work towards it. Even small commitments build inner integrity, the strengths to take on more responsibility, to choose values over feelings.
And this ability to commit is fundamental to all 7 habits.
Absolutely. Knowledge, skill, desire, they're all within our circle of influence. Working on any of them improves the balance, moves us towards being more principle-centered and effective.
So he ends habit 1 with a challenge, a 30-day test.
Yes. For 30 days, focus only on your circle of influence. Make small commitments and keep them. Be a light, not a judge. A model, not a critic. Part of the solution, not the problem.
Don't blame, don't make excuses. If you mess up, admit it, fix it, learn from it. Work on yourself first.
And that critical check. If you find yourself thinking the problem is out there, stop. That thought is the problem because it puts you in a reactive mode.
Consistently using our freedom to choose expands it. Being passive shrinks it, lets others run our lives.
Use your independent will. Take responsibility for your effectiveness, your happiness, your environment. It's the foundation for everything else.
And that final Samuel Johnson quote really drives it home. Happiness comes from changing your own disposition, not fruitlessly trying to change everything else around you.
A powerful end to the discussion on proactivity.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive for today, we looked at moving from that surface-level personality ethic to the deeper character ethic. We've explored how our paradigms or maps shape our reality and the power of shifting them. We've talked about grounding ourselves in universal principles.
And we really dug into habit 1, be proactive, understanding it as taking responsibility, choosing our response, and focusing our energy where it counts, in our circle of influence.
And that 30-day challenge is out there for you listening. Try focusing solely on your circle of influence and just see what happens.
And maybe a final thought to ponder. Which map, personality, or character ethic is really guiding your choices day to day? And what might happen if you consciously leaned more towards being principle-centered? What could that unlock for you?
Every topic's got a taste, so like, share, and subscribe now. Your next plate's coming soon.